This is All India Radio. Welcome to the business news program Money Matters, a program that brings you the latest news from various segments of stock markets, business, economy, investment, corporates and agriculture. I am Kamal Saxena and first the headlines. Country's exports declined 0.8% to $26.9 billion in December 2020, but the imports grew 7.6% to $42.6 billion. Bank credit grows at 5.4% in the second quarter of this fiscal, and sales of petrol in the year 2020 increased 108%, says Indian Oil Corporation. The country's exports declined 0.8% to $26.9 billion in December 2020 due to contraction in sectors like petroleum, leather and marine products, according to preliminary data released by the Commerce Ministry today. The trade deficit in December widened to $15.7 billion as imports grew 7.6% to $42.6 billion, the data showed. In April to December period of this fiscal, the country's merchandise exports contracted by 15.8% to $201 billion. Imports during the 9 months of the current fiscal declined over 29% to $258.3 billion. In December 2020, oil imports declined 10.4% to $9.61 billion. During April to December period of this fiscal, the imports slumped 44.5% to $53.7 billion. Bank credit growth on an year-on-year basis stood at 5.4% in September quarter of the current fiscal year. Credit growth for metropolitan branches, which have major share in bank credit, decelerated to 3.3% year-on-year in September 2020 quarter. But credit offtake improved from rural, semi-urban and urban branches, according to the data released by the Reserve Bank of India. RBI yesterday released this data under a document Outstanding Credit of Scheduled Commercial Banks. The data captures various characteristics of bank credit such as occupation and organizational sector of the borrower, type of account and interest rates. Personal loans, which account for 1/4 of the bank credit, continue to maintain double-digit growth during September quarter. But industrial credit contracted 1.7% year-on-year, and its share in total credit stood at 30% in September quarter. Despite disruptions in commercial activities due to the COVID-19 crisis, sales of petrol and diesel have increased during 2020, which indicates a revival of the economy. Indian Oil Corporation said during 2020, sales of motor spirit have increased by 108% and diesel by 96% over the previous year. According to Indian Oil Corporation, LPG demand increased by 10% during the lockdown months in the country. The company further said 2020 was a year of digitalization, which had helped it achieve seamless business continuity. The government has extended the income tax return filing deadline for individuals till January 10th and for companies till February 15th. The Income Tax Department tweeted over 4.84 crore income tax returns for assessment year 2020-21 have already been filed till 31st of December 2020. An analysis of the data showed that filing of tax returns by individuals for 2019-20 has slowed in the current year, while filing by businesses and trusts have increased. The Union Labour Ministry has formalized work from home for the services sector, while leaving it for the employers in the IT sector to mutually decide the work hours for its employees. The Labour Ministry said, and I quote, "Pursuant to Section 29 of the Industrial Relations Code 2020, the central government has published the draft model standing orders for the manufacturing sector, mining sector and services sector." The ministry added, keeping in view of the needs of the services sector, a separate model standing orders for the services sector has been prepared for the first time. According to the draft standing orders, uniformity has been maintained in all the three model standing orders while providing some flexibility considering the sector's specific requirements. The government has put up the standing orders for public comments over the next 30 days. Automaker Mahindra & Mahindra said that it was close to getting a buyer on board for its ailing South Korean subsidiary SsangYong. The company said the deal is more or less agreed to but not concluded. The deal will have to be concluded before 28th of February this year or SsangYong will go into court receivership. Post the sale, Mahindra will hold 30% or less in the maker of Rexton and Tivoli SUVs. In more corporate news, the Securities and Exchange Board of India has penalized Reliance Industries Limited as well as two other entities for their alleged role in carrying out manipulative trades in Reliance Petroleum Limited in 2007. Reliance Industries has now challenged an earlier SEBI order in the matter in the Supreme Court. In its order yesterday, the regulator imposed a penalty of 25 crore rupees on Reliance Industries. It also fined Navi Mumbai SEZ 20 crore rupees and asked Mumbai SEZ to pay 10 crore rupees in connection with the case. Reliance Petroleum Limited was merged with Reliance Industries in 2009. SEBI's contention is that RIL's sale of 5% stake in Reliance Petroleum was preceded by the acquisition of its futures by parties acting on behalf of Reliance Industries. And news from banking sector, around a dozen large borrowers have applied for the RBI's loan restructuring scheme for those affected by COVID stress. The deadline for corporates and individuals to make an application under the RBI's resolution framework for COVID-related stress ended on December 31st last year. For small businesses, there is a separate restructuring scheme that will be valid until March 2021. The Future Group, Shapoorji Pallonji Group and SpiceJet are among those applying for loan restructuring. There are a couple of thermal power generating companies, a few toll road projects and companies in the textile sector, which have reported to have applied for loan restructuring. Tata Motors yesterday reported a 21% year-on-year growth in total vehicle sales in the domestic market to 53,430 units in December 2020. Domestic passenger vehicle sales shot up 84% to 23,545 units last month. While the growing popularity of Nexon EV, the company also posted an impressive sale in electric vehicle with highest ever quarter wholesale of 1,253 units in the third quarter of this fiscal and 418 units in December 2018. Honda Cars India reported a 2.7% increase in domestic sales to 8,638 units in December last year. Exports stood at 713 units last month. In the United States, a bipartisan congressional provision condemning China's aggression towards India has become a law as the U.S. Congress overrode President Donald Trump's veto on a defense policy bill, which among other things included calling out the Chinese government for its actions along the LOC. The National Defense Authorization Act 2021, which became a law yesterday after Congress overrode Trump's veto, included a resolution urging the Chinese government to end its military aggression towards India along the LAC. IIT Bombay's placement season started off on a good note on day one, which witnessed the participation of 35 companies. And that brings the end of this bulletin. Thank you for being with us.